Hi everyone, it's meteorologist Joel Curtis with your Alaska Weather TV show. Starting out with the warnings, watches, and advisories. All of them are in Fairbanks' area of responsibility today. We have a winter storm for the eastern Brooks Range, upper Koyukuk Valley, also for the central interior. We have winter weather advisories for St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait, and eastern Beaufort Sea, Yukon Flats, middle Tanana River area, Denali, and the upper Kuskokwim Valley. Just a reminder, on March the 29th, we do have a tsunami test. It's going to come around 10:15. Please note that it's only a test, and you will hear from various sources that there is a tsunami test ongoing. Also, we have a river breakup this year. The forecast for that is most of Alaska average potential. Some of the exceptions are above average for the upper Yukon River, upper Tanana Basin or so, and then spring temperature outlook increases to overall potential for the Yukon and Kuskokwim River as well. So let's take a look at our satellite image today. It's really interesting. We have this very slow-moving cold front over the central portion of the state. And this is bringing precipitation and some wind in a few areas, and it's spread out across a lot of the central interior, which has prompted the warnings out there. Also, you can see out in the Bering Sea that there is quite a system starting out. It's just about on the same latitude as Shimia right now and moving up very slowly toward the northeast. And so here's one more look at that satellite image there, and as you can see, that it's a real slow mover on that cold front across the state. So there it is on today's weather map, showing some snow and blowing snow along the front and a little bit behind it. Also some steep pressure gradients, so that's causing some blowing snow in areas well west of the front. A couple of high pressure centers, one over the southern Bering Sea and the other one over the southern Gulf, about 1038. And then we have that 985 millibar low moving into the western Bering Sea. And then that system moves toward the northeast. It fills to about 990 millibars or so, but it's got a good occluded front wrapped around it tonight. Also, the snow and blowing snow continues across the central interior and also up into the Bering Strait area, which is including St. Lawrence Island as well, and high pressure to the south. And then for Tuesday's weather, we've got that system. It's still slow moving. It's still filling a little bit, about 964 millibars or so, fully wrapped around an occluded front with snow and blowing snow out ahead of it. And then we also have snow that's now crossing the Alcan and fizzling out in northwestern Canada, a little bit of a trough along the northeast Gulf Coast. And then on Wednesday, that system fills to 986 millibars near St. Lawrence Island, fully occluded front around that system. And then notice that secondary system now has developed around Sitkinak Island or so, about a 1006 millibar low, not very strong, but enough to bring a little precipitation to the western Gulf. And then we also have some snow extending up into Cook Inlet as well. And then for southeast, you can still see that they're pretty much out of the weather, a little bit of rain offshore, but other than that, not a whole lot going on. So now let's look at our low temperatures Tuesday morning. Temperatures in the 20s and 30s for the Panhandle, down to 12 for Gulkana, 29 for Anchorage. And then as the high temperatures on Tuesday afternoon, we're looking at in the 40s generally for the Panhandle, up into the 30s as you get with a little bit of solar input there. for south central Alaska, and then low temperatures Wednesday night, single digit for Gulf-Canada, and then into the 20s as you get further down the Kenai Peninsula, and then over in the Panhandle, we've got temperatures near freezing, but some in the mid-30s or so, so still pretty cold. Winter still raising its ugly head. And then for high temperatures on Wednesday afternoon, well into the 40s for the Panhandle, and then in the 20s and 30s for south central Alaska. For low temperatures on Tuesday night for the North Slope, we've got single digits all the way across there, and even down to almost to Fort Yukon, which is up to 16, 18 for Fairbanks, and then Kotzebue -1 and Nome +1. And then for high temperatures in the afternoon, we're starting again to see a little bit of solar input there. Temperatures into the teens in a few spots, but single digits in a few. 25 for Fort Yukon, 32 for Fairbanks, and then 19 as we come over to Nome. And then for low temperatures Wednesday morning, again, single digits all along the North Slope, up to 10 for Kotzebue and up to 7 for Fairbanks. And then for Wednesday afternoon, temperatures again in the teens on the North Slope, well into the 20s as we get further south, and then 29 for Nome with some of that warm advection coming up with that weather system. Low temperatures Tuesday morning for the southwest, in the teens in the interior, but once again, as you go out the Alaska Peninsula and into the Aleutians, into the 30s, 27 for the Pribilofs, and then high temperatures on Tuesday afternoon, generally approaching freezing as we get into southwestern Alaska, a little bit of an up freezing for Bristol Bay, and then in the 40s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Low temperatures on Wednesday morning, again in the 20s for the Kuskokwim Delta, 20s also for Bristol Bay, and then in the 30s as you go out along the Alaska Peninsula, 29 for the Pribilofs. And then for Wednesday afternoon, highs in the mid-30s, again a little solar input there, and into the 40s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula. Look at our 6 to 10 day, April 2nd to April 6th, we can see temperatures well below normal, good chance of them, all the way from Fairbanks on down to Ketchikan. And then for our 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, April 2nd to the April 6th, a pretty good chance of above normal precipitation anywhere from Bethel up to Norton Sound. And then for much of the state, a slight chance that it's going to be above normal precipitation. But notice southeast Alaska is staying on the dry side there with a pretty good chance of it being below normal precipitation on that side over there. And then for our 8 to 14, we've got again a look at a pretty good chance of colder than normal temperatures all the way from Fairbanks on down to Ketchikan, but also for most of the central portion of the state as well. And then pretty much normal as you go out the Alaska Peninsula and also down toward the southern part of the Panhandle. It's starting to tend toward normal. And then for our precipitation on 8 to 14 days, April 4th through April 10th, above normal precipitation for much of the state, a little bit better than even chance, all the way from Arctic Village down to Dillingham. And then the other areas still marked as above normal precipitation. So we're looking at a little bit wetter conditions as usual, but then as you go out the Alaska Peninsula, it starts to again get close to normal. So don't forget about the tsunami test a couple of days from now, and then also just a quick review of those warnings. We still have a winter storm for the Eastern Brooks Range, Upper Kovac Valley, and the central interior, and then also winter weather advisories for St. Lawrence Island and Bering Strait. Also the eastern Beaufort Sea, and then down the Yukon Flats, as well as Middle Tanana, Denali, and the Upper Kuskokwim Valley. And then so we're everybody pay attention to these warnings. Get your latest local information from the National Weather Service, and please stay safe out there. We're wishing you the best. Thanks for tuning in.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for the aviation weather. Starting out with the flying weather on Tuesday morning, we've got a few areas of IFR up in the central interior as well as down into Prince William Sound and also the eastern side near of Cook Inlet near Augustine Island. These are due to the remnants of that old cold front that was moving through the area overnight last night, and still a little bit of vertical motion with that. Also, we have an area of IFR on Tuesday morning moving into the Bering Sea. Looking in the afternoon, that system is the one that really starts to take over. You can see some starting out for Kotzebue Sound as well as up through the Bering Strait and well out into the Bering Sea, including the Pribilofs. And then for Wednesday morning, we've got an extensive area of IFR all along the southwest coast. Stretches down into the Dutch Harbor area, also including the Pribilofs, and then up through the Bering Strait and a little bit into the Chukchi Sea. And then as Wednesday moves on there in the afternoon, all of the southwestern Alaska moving on up into Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island as well, and then all the waters south of St. Lawrence Island. Looking at our pass reports, we've got on Tuesday, Anatovik starts out as IFR but becomes VFR. Same thing with Adigan Pass, IFR becoming VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, IFR becoming VFR. Rainy Pass, VFR. Windy Pass, IFR becoming VFR. A little bit of turbulence in the morning. Isabel Pass, IFR becoming VFR and turbulence in the morning. Mentassa Pass, VFR. Tahiti Pass, IFR becoming VFR. Portage Pass, IFR becoming VFR. Chilkoot and White Pass, both VFR. And then for our freezing levels, starting out on Tuesday morning, the area surface, again, includes a little bit above the surface for the Panhandle, across the Gulf Coast, down through the southern Kenai Peninsula, across the Alaska Peninsula, and then out into the Bering Sea. So most of Alaska, again, below freezing. But then we have that one area of warm 2,000 to 4,000 feet, down by Dixon Entrance or so. And then, as you can see, the warm air really is south of the Aleutians, 2,000 ramping up to 6,000. So for our icing forecast on Tuesday, we've got that remnants of those fronts that I was talking about earlier over near by the Alcan, stretching all the way down to the Gulf, and that's about 6,000 to 14,000 feet. Those little super cool liquid water droplets up pretty high. But then the significant area of icing on Tuesday, moving in all the way from the western Aleutians on up through the Bering Strait, including St. Lawrence Island, and on up into Kotzebue Sound. A considerable moderate area, and looking at about 4,000 to about 10,000 feet or so. For our jet stream on Tuesday, we've got the main jet westerlies moving into the Aleutians, core speed about 150 knots. Otherwise, generally some 80-knot westerlies across most of the state, down to 75 knots as you get out into the Gulf. And then for our 9,000-foot winds on Tuesday, we've got that low pressure system in the Bering Sea, some 45 to 50 knots, and then ramping up to about 60 knots as you get further south into the Aleutians. Otherwise, about 35 to 45 knots all across the state, and generally westerlies. And then for our 3,000-foot winds on Tuesday, again, that low in the Bering Sea, we're starting to get that southwesterlies up to 55 knots out in the Bering, but as you get closer to shore, the wind really drops off, and the same thing about the northwesterlies 30 off the Panhandle. And so for our turbulence on Tuesday, accounting for those winds, we've got a surface of 6,000 feet, anywhere from the Seward Peninsula on up to the North Slope. One area of considerable moderate as you get in the far western Brooks Range. Also some considerable moderate as on the central portion of the Alaska Range. Surface to 7,000 feet, and then surface to 4,000 feet out in the Aleutians with that wind pressing over the islands there. So be sure to file a flight plan and fly safe out there.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining us again, talking about the Augmented Reality Sandbox, is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. And he's actually talking about a project from AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. A lot of acronyms, but some really fun stuff today, right, Eric?
You bet. We've got a learning tool that is a tool that's fun to use, and it really has a relevance to actually daily lives of anyone who goes outside and sees lumpy topography in Alaska. We've got a lot of mountains and such. You know, when I was younger and go on your first hike in the hills, say, you're given, maybe you're in the Boy Scouts or you get at the kiosk at the trailhead, a topographic map, a flat piece of paper with all these lines on it, bullseyes, long lines that curve back on themselves, say, perhaps things that look like this, a quadrangle or a topographic map. We've got here just to illustrate a couple of examples near Denali. Alaska has so much topography, so many mountains. And what are all these lines that we see? It can be tough to know what this means the first time you look at it. What we've got, all these lines represent lines of where the elevation of the topography goes through a certain level above sea level, say that this line represents where the mountains have gone from below 1,000 feet, mean sea level, up through 1,000 feet and above. That's your 1,000-foot contour. And when the mountain keeps going up, you're up to 1,200 feet, 1,400 feet, and so on. And that's how you get this little bullseye around the peak of a mountain.
Kind of makes layered slices, right?
Kind of like layered slices. Nice way to look at that. And when you see the lines are closer together, you're going up more steeply. If the mountain rises more slowly, it takes you longer in horizontal space to go through those different vertical increments. So
that is really hard to visualize.
Right. Imagine you're looking at a 2D piece of paper, two-dimensional piece of paper, but you're trying to understand what the three-dimensional world looks like. Well, enter the augmented reality sandbox. Yes, what is that? It is right here. We have the sandbox with us today, Sandbox 2.0 portable version. Sweet. Built up at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And we've got a couple of folks helping out today.
Let's see, Alana Valaji, and she's a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. If you want to give us a thumbs up there, Alana, thanks for helping us out today. And Courtney Brees, she's the outreach coordinator from AKwx, also helping us out today. Thanks, Courtney.
And this tool here has a Microsoft Kinect to sense the level of sand in this sandbox. And then the Kinect feeds its information into a computer that then sends a signal to a projector to draw the appropriate topographic lines on this topography. The fun thing about this, as we can see here, is that the sandbox and its Kinect and its projector, they all work as a team. So here we've got a mountain in the middle of the sandbox. What if we took down the mountain to some degree? Watch as the software responds and redraws the topography.
Kind of a caldera forming there.
There you go, And what's fun about the sandbox, too, is it knows that gravity flows downhill, and we've got some water that's actually down in the lowest elevations. And what's happening now is we're making it rain a little bit. We'll fill up rain into that elevated lake bed, that caldera, as you said. And so now water is pooled up there. And what if you gouged out an outlet channel?
Glacial dam release.
There you go. The water flows out. What we're seeing here is a tool that allows people to touch and connect Microsoft Connect, RRR, to connect two-dimensional topographic maps like what we have here, these flat things on a piece of paper, to the real three-dimensional world. I think this Sandbox's real particular application as a learning tool to young people is, what does a two-dimensional map mean when it's trying to represent the three-dimensional world? This sandbox is kind of both at once. It's actually three-dimensional, lumpy topography there, the sand, but it's got these lines drawn on the three-dimensional sand that would be on a two-dimensional piece of paper.
Wow, that is a huge leap from the learning that we experienced when we were younger to how children and even adults are visualizing in this new forms of technology. Allows that to kind of reshape their thinking and visualize this in a very useful and absolutely hands-on way. It's amazing.
It's a hands-on tool, and
it's hard for me to sit here and not go play with that.
Well, that's what happened at GINA up at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, when the first model was being made, the prototype with plywood and such, we had professional adult professor types that heard about this, and they came by because they wanted to see how it worked.
Okay.
And everyone becomes that idealistic, wonder-filled youngster.
Sure.
And you just can't help but play with that and to see how it reacts in time. And
right.
It's a dynamic learning tool, and it responds.
That's exactly the word. Yeah.
And you wonder what applicabilities beyond a teaching tool for topography can it have. You can see how in Alaska we have inundation mapping is an issue. If you had water slosh inland, say in a coastal flooding event on the western coast of Alaska or the Arctic coast, you could see this. The concept is illustrated here as an introductory learning method. I think this is a potentially good outreach tool for all of us in Alaska.
Okay, so not only just a topographical sense, a mapping sense, maybe something that leads into understanding of how geographic information systems work with GIS, but also geology, if we wanted to get into kind of the formations and the bigger land masses and the representation of the 2D map. We could go into hydrology, which is very important in Alaska, of course, and even just understanding weather sense. Mounding up a big pile of sand could be that Arctic high-pressure system sitting on top of Fairbanks, and the voids would be low-pressure systems. This can go a lot of different directions.
Yes, exactly. It's not just landforms, but pressure has contours of high pressure and low pressure. And I wish I had had this kind of a learning tool when I was taking Meteorology 101 back 25 years ago.
Wow.
Would have been helpful, I think.
Probably would have gotten a better grade, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for coming by, Eric, and Alana and Courtney, thank you so much for your help there in the sandbox. We are going to play in the sandbox a little bit more coming up tomorrow on our next edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We hope you join us for that. In the meantime, make sure you go to alaska.edu/EPSCOR. That's alaska.edu EPSCOR to learn more information about what we're doing with this augmented reality sandbox around Alaska. We'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi everybody, and now for your marine forecast. Starting out with our ice edge, we've got a big retreat with the last southerly winds that we had, and it's retreated about 15 to 25 miles or so toward the north, and then max was about mid-March. So we're looking, we're in the downhill slide now on our sea ice projections. So starting out with the marine forecast for southeast on Tuesday, generally northerlies on the inside, 15 knots, seas up to 3 feet. And then on the outside, we've got some northwesterlies going, ranging anywhere from about 10 all the way up to 25 knots, and seas up to 9 feet. And then for Wednesday, those winds become generally northerly on the inside, 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 4 feet. And then on the outside waters, still some northwesterlies the further south you get, up to 30 knots, and seas up to 12 feet. But you can also see that off of Cape Suckling, it's responding for a southeasterly about 20 knots and seas 7 feet. For the south central waters, we've got a mixed bag of directions, but generally north and westerlies. On the outside waters, 10 ranging all the way up to 25 knots. Prince William Sound, northwest, 10 and seas 2 feet. On the outside waters, seas up to about 6 feet or so. And then for Cook Inlet, 10 ramping all the way up to 25 should get bound by Augustine, seas 6 feet there. And then for Wednesday, now we start to see a mixed bag of directions, generally easterlies as far as the farther east you go, 20 knots on the outside, seas up to about 5 feet or so. For the inlet, 10 to 20 knots, seas up to 4 feet, and Prince William Sound 10 knots. And then for the peninsula and Kodiak Island, first of all, we've got some variable winds in the central area on the Pacific side, but up to 20 knots in Chillicothe Strait, seas 4 feet there, 15 knots with the response off a false pass to that system that's moving into the Bering Sea. And then for the Bering side, we have 10 all the way up to 20 knots and seas up to 5 feet. And then for Wednesday, we've got generally starting to come around to west or southwest or so, 20 to 25 knots, seas up to 7 feet on the Gulf side. And then on the Bering Sea, 20 to 30 knots, seas up to 11 feet off of Cold Bay. For the Aleutian chain, now we can see that weather system developing in the Bering Sea and is starting to drive some gale force the farther west you are, around 35 knots or so, seas up to 23 feet in the far western Aleutians. But then in the eastern Aleutians, we've got some winds ranging anywhere from 15 to 25 knots, seas up to 8 feet. And then those they all become westerlies as that system moves farther into the Bering Sea, ranging 20 all the way up to 30 knots, seas up to 11 feet, and then for the far western Aleutians, 20 to 25 knots, westerlies again, seas up to 11 feet. And then for Tuesday, for the west coast, 30 knots off of southeasterlies off of St. Matthew, 25 knots in the Pribilos, otherwise 15 to 20 knots on the along the west coast over the ice. And then for Wednesday, we've got generally 20 knots, except when you get off the ice shelf, 25 to 30 knots and seas up to 13 feet out in the Bering Sea. And then for the Bering Strait, all southerlies, 20 to 30 knots or so, ranging and over the ice, and then southwesterlies along the north slope, ranging 20 to 30 knots, and then for Wednesday along the north slope, around 15 knots or so, but up to 25 knots down through the Bering Strait. So looking at tonight's weather, again, we've got that system, that front dissipating over Alaska, but our system now moving into the Bering Sea around 990 millibars or so, driving along a little bit of warm air in that. And then for Tuesday, that system still starts to fill 994 millibars out in the Bering Sea as it's approaching St. Lawrence Island. And then finally on Wednesday, we've got it makes it to St. Lawrence Island at 996 millibars. Plenty of snow and blowing snow around that system. Please stay safe out there. Thanks for tuning in.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.